Hello Neowin, and welcome to part 1 of the Super Smartphone Showdown. This is where over the next couple of days I'll be going through these 5 devices and giving you a wrap up on which one of these is the best. Of course, here we have the flagship device from each of the major Android smartphone manufacturers. In no particular order, we have the LG Optimus 4X HD, the newest device in my collection, with a review coming up very shortly. We have the Samsung Galaxy S3, the Motorola Droid Razr. Now, I would have ideally liked Motorola's newest flagship device, which was announced just today, but unfortunately we're stuck with the Razr for now. We have the Sony Xperia S, and we also have the HTC One X. Now, I do have to thank some people for giving me these devices here today. I'd like to thank HTC and Sony for each providing the One X and the Xperia S. And I'd like to thank mobbycity.com.au for supplying the Galaxy S3 and the Optimus 4X HD. And I actually own the Droid Razr here. Now, of course, going through this Super Smartphone Showdown, we'll be taking a look at each of the major aspects of the device that I usually do in the reviews, such as, the camera, the display, the design, the battery life, the performance. Everything that you want to know about these devices will be taken up in each part individually. But today, we are looking at the design. Which one of these devices here has the best design? And I understand that can be a bit subjective, but of course I have to say which one feels the best and stuff like that, so we'll get straight on to it. The first one we can eliminate straight away from the running is the Galaxy S3. If you read my review of this device, I essentially slammed this for being ugly, and I stick with that. It is made of plastic on the back. It feels cheap and tacky for a flagship device. To be honest, Samsung, I was expecting something a bit more expensive considering the price that you pay for devices such as this. The curves on the front look very strange, to be honest. Most of these devices here, you'll notice, use either very, nice curves, or they use hard edges like the Optimus 4X. But this one uses, well, it's too curved, to be honest. Do have to admit, the Gorilla Glass display on the front, Gorilla Glass 2 that is very smooth and nice to use. You'll also find that on the One X, and it is much smoother than these 3 devices which don't employ Gorilla Glass 2. Apart from that, we are taking this one out of the running because of the fact that it uses way too much plastic. We'll move on to the LG Optimus 4X HD. It's nice and thin. It's one of the thinner devices that we have here today. And you notice that it is very square, which is something that I enjoy out of a smartphone. It does look quite good. The back is plastic, but it is textured plastic, which is something that Samsung could learn from. It does feel quite nice. Maybe it feels a tad cheap and a tad tacky, but it is very nice. One thing I'm not convinced though about is this very strange fake metal look that they've gone with on the rim here. It feels strange in the hand, and I'm not convinced that it looks the best. It does give it a bit of texture, makes it a tad bit easier to hold, but again, I'm not convinced that that is the best thing to have on a smartphone. So unfortunately, LG, you are not going to win this round. Move on to the Sony Xperia S. This is actually the fattest device that I have here today, coming in at over 10mm thick. You can notice that in the hand when you have the other devices here with you, but to be honest, by itself, it's not really that big of a deal. It does have this very cool feature down the bottom where it has a see-through bit here, which does show the icons for each of the hardware buttons that are located on the front. The unfortunate thing though is that the buttons aren't actually located on the glass bit, but just slightly above, and that does create some slight usability problems for this device. It's also reasonably large top to bottom, with a lot of bezel space going at the top and bottom of the device. I'm not sure entirely why that is. Also, the use of the power button on the left hand side is somewhat awkward, especially considering the volume. I mean, the 3.5mm headphone jack is right next to the power button. It does make it very awkward. They also use plastic for most of this device, but unlike Samsung, it is somewhat textured. I wouldn't say it's the best material to use, but it is certainly better than the Galaxy S3. The Droid Razr is obviously the thinnest device, and to be honest, it also feels the best because of the use of Kevlar on the back here. That does feel very nice. The camera hump here is a bit of a disappointment. It's a sort of trademark Motorola thing, but it does detract a bit from the usability of the device. But the main problem I have is that it's a 4.3-inch display in a device that is the same size of that as a 4.7-inch display. That means there is a lot of bezel. There's a fairly sizable bezel there on the side, which does make using the display rather hard because you have to stretch over the bezel to use this beautiful display on the front. Curiously, it's the only device here that packs a search button on the front. I guess it's gone a bit out of fashion with the introduction of Android 4.0, but it is curious to say. Unfortunately, the fact that it is quite large for a device with only 4.3-inch display means that that has to go out of the running, and that of course means that I'm crowning it to the HTC One X, the smartphone here with the best design. And the reason that is for several factors, to be honest. The bezel, unlike the Motorola Droid Razr, is quite nice. It's very slim, and the front employs Gorilla Glass 2 like the Galaxy S3, which means that it is a breeze just to flick your fingers across. It feels amazing. Thanks to the Infinity Glass, it simply slides right off the edges and it feels amazing. The device is also quite thin, unlike some of the previous HTC offerings that we have had. It also uses a polycarbonate unibody design. Now that does mean technically it is plastic, but it feels amazing. It's very textured and feels just smooth and nice straight out of the hand. Not too sure about the use of this fairly large camera bump here. Some people might complain that sliding it along tables and stuff like that will scratch the camera, but you'll find that it only actually contacts with the very base of this. So that is a bonus. There's only one complaint I have about this, and that is the fact that it has the power button on the top rather than the side. Interestingly, out of all of these devices, the Galaxy S3 and the Motorola Droid Razr are the only two devices that use power buttons on the right hand side of the device. The Optimus 4X HD has the power button on the top here, and as I mentioned before, it is also on the top left, annoyingly, on the Xperia S. Apart from that, that is the reason why I'm crowning it to the One X. So well done HTC for making the best design here. Also, a few other tidbits that we have is that the Galaxy S3 here is the only device with a physical button on the front, of course using the home button here. It is also one of the devices that has the back button on the right hand side as opposed to the left hand side like on the majority of devices like the Xperia S here and the One X on the end. The One X is the only device here that uses the app switcher button directly on the front. These two ice cream sandwich devices have menu buttons. Not sure about the use there, whether that was the right idea. Sort of ditching Google there with their Galaxy Nexus going with no buttons, but it's not too bad. Anyway, we will wrap this up. Congratulations to the HTC for having the best design. We will come back tomorrow with another edition of the Super Smartphone Showdown. We'll be looking at all the displays on these devices, which will be a nice little comparison there. So please do check back tomorrow for that video. Thank you for supporting my reviews. Thank you to Mobby City for supplying these two devices and the manufacturers for providing these two. And we will see you tomorrow. So thank you and enjoy.